stage, I just went traveling for the sake of it. So it gave me a new experience as well, just living for the day rather than planning for tomorrow all the time. I think a lot of people forget to live for today. This is life now. Enjoy it today, because tomorrow your destination may never come.
Achieve all things if you are willing to put in the work. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Podcast with SHEILA, the podcast that is spreading positivity around the world by sharing inspiring life experiences. He rode the Sahara Desert, traveled through Africa to Cape Town and other places on a Moto Guzzi 42 years ago. Now at age 64, he is planning on completing this journey. Chris Donaldson will be sharing with us today his life experiences, lessons, and other stories as we go on. As usual, we aim to motivate, inform, and inspire you. Hello, Chris, and welcome to Podcast with SHEILA.
Hi, SHEILA.
Lovely to meet you, Chris. So in brief, who is Chris? Where does he come from? Just a basic background story, just so that our audience get to know who our guest is for today.
Well, I'm Chris Donaldson. I'm from Belfast, Northern Ireland. I'm 65, I think. I'm at that age, I can't remember anymore. And I've lived here on and off for almost my life. But I was brought up in the 70s in Belfast, and it was a pretty rough station to be in. There was bombs going off and people getting shot all around the place. So when I was 21, I decided to go to Australia. And for some reason, decided to do it on a motorbike. But it's a long story. I never actually got there because I set off, and then the Islamic Revolution took off in Iran, blocked the road east. So I ended up going everywhere else in the world, apart from Australia. I ended up in Argentina, all places, after riding down through Africa, sailing up in a yacht back to Europe, driving around the States, Canada, and then down to South America. So I came back and resumed normal life for 40 years, and I wrote a book about my travels called Going the Wrong Way.
What was life like growing up? Just before we get into the story proper, take us to life as young Chris. What was it like growing up?
Well, it wasn't bad. At the time, anyway, I thought it wasn't bad because I lived in a nice part of Belfast. But this is to say, the troubles were going on. We went to school in the centre of town, and we could see bombs going off. We would have to get out of school sometimes. Friends got shot. So there was a lot of bother about it. But being a teenager, it's only when you get older that you realise that life shouldn't be like this. So I think kids have great resilience. They don't get through things basically because they don't know any better. Yeah. It's only when you learn what's going on elsewhere in the world you realise, hang on, this shouldn't be like this, you know?
Yeah. So how did growing up in Belfast affect your life? Did it affect it? Do you think it affected it positively or negatively?
I think it affected me positively. I think seeing that people trouble going on and people working to alleviate the problems and to get around the problems helped me later on in life. Whenever I ran into problems in my own life, I realised that you can either fall back with the problem and stop, or else you can find a way around it. And I realised that the only way is forward. The only way is to find your way around it.
Great. What informed you, or what made you make the decision to travel around the world 42 years ago on a bike?
Well, I think it was really just to get out of Belfast at that stage. I was 21 and realised the rest of the world wasn't like this, and Australia was the land of opportunity. So I wanted to go there and get a job and work there for a while and see what happens. As it turned out, I came back after a year and a half and spent my working life in Belfast. But it was very much a sort of 21 is a very much a coming of age time in your life when you're sort of changing from teenager to manhood, and it was a very eventful period.
Why did you decide to do it on a bike? Why not go by plane or by some other means, but on a bike?
I think I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to experience a bit of the world, not just fly in, fly out sort of thing. I wanted to see what the difference was between the countries in the world and experience some of the other places. But I wanted to challenge myself and give myself you're on a motorbike, you're on your own. You can't take friends and family with you. I wanted to be on my own and learn about myself and put myself through what needed to be done. I didn't realize that at the time, but looking back on it, I can see that now, that it was the challenge that I wanted.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think quite recently, a group of Ghanaians have traveled from Ghana to England by road. And it was something they had done to challenge themselves. When I first saw the headlines of the story, I felt, I wasn't too interested about this, because I thought it was a kind of a stowaway kind of thing. Until later on, I delved right into the story and realized these were adventurous people. These are people who like to travel. They're a group of friends who travel around Africa a lot. And I think, according to them, the last time they had done that was to go to Cape Town, travel from Ghana to Cape Town by road. And then when they got to Cape Town, they said if they've been able to do it to Cape Town, then they would see if they can do it to England. So they got here, I think on Sunday, 10 a.m. So they had spent 16 days on the road from Ghana to London. And when I heard the story behind it and the reason why they did that, I was really, really impressed. And I think that sometimes when we challenge ourselves to some of these things, it brings out the best in us, and we don't know what we are capable of until we've done some of these things. And that was why I wanted to know why you decided to go by bike and not by plane. And I totally agree with you that it gives you a time to yourself to explore the world on your own without any distractions as you go on. Is there anything else you'd like to add to it?
Yeah, I think just to follow on that, I suppose the reason I called my book Going the Wrong Way is I ended up in Argentina rather than Australia, but it was also a lifestyle as well.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes going the wrong way, the hard way, is much more challenging, much more fruitful, much more pleasurable in the long run, you know.
Yeah. Were there any lessons you learned on this journey being alone?
Well, lots, I suppose, and lots and little. I learned make a bit better to plan things than not. I ended up traveling down Africa without any knowledge about Africa at all. In those days, you couldn't just Google your information. You had a guidebook, and I didn't have any. All my guidebooks were for Asia. So I travelled a lot without knowing what the next country was and what the next town was, which was difficult in a way because there would be hardships and problems from that. But in a way, it was pleasurable too because you got the experience of traveling for the sake of traveling. Usually, when you're traveling somewhere, you travel to get somewhere, and there's a destination in mind. But as the way the world happened at that stage, I just went traveling for the sake of it. So it gave me a new experience as well, just living for the day rather than planning for tomorrow all the time. I think a lot of people forget to live for today. This is life now. Enjoy it today because tomorrow your destination may never come, you know.
I like that. Tomorrow your destination may never come. So live for today. Live your best life for today. Why do you want to complete this journey at this age? Because it's been years down the line since you did the journey and you're trying to do it again. Why are you trying to do it again?
Well, I just actually completed it there early in the year. I got to Australia. I suppose of being bloody minded. I suppose in a way, stubborn. I wrote the book about the travels, and I got it's on Amazon. A couple of friends read it, and they said, "Well, you never actually got to Australia. Why not give it another go?" So I still had the same motorbike, which is now 45 years old. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to Australia, try and do the trip. I'll do it on the same bike. So we set off a year and a half ago, and I did it again. I couldn't afford the time or the money to go all in one go, so we did it in 2-week stages, and with that Belfast went to Athens, and then Israel, and then back to Athens, and then Dubai, Pakistan, India, Nepal, all different 2 or 3 week stages. So it took me a year and a half to get there. I think the first trip was a sort of coming of age story. This has been like a coming of old age.
Yeah.
Because I'm now 65 and sort of at the end of my working life. So it's I wanted to again challenge myself to see if I could still do what I did when I was 21.
Yeah, that was exactly the question I was coming to, because you are no more 21 and you're much older now. So have you considered all of that? And this time around, do you have your journey properly planned? Because like you said earlier time, it wasn't properly planned. You didn't know where you were when you got to some parts of the journey. Do you know exactly where you're going to be properly planned out now?
Yeah, well, pretty much. I mean, you can find all your information on Google. You could get your hotels on booking.com or Airbnb, or you just dial in the city and it'll tell you where it is on your GPS. But there's still, the world's a strange place, and there's still things that happen. I plan to go from Israel into Jordan and through to Saudi Arabia that way. But we got to the Israel-Jordan border and they wouldn't let me through, so I had to go back again and go by Turkey and Iran.
Yeah.
So the beauty and the pain and the pleasure of traveling in the third world especially is that you don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
No matter how you plan, but that's part of the fun of it.
I like it when people take a risk and all that. Would you say that traveling by this way is more expensive than going by air? Comparatively, which one is expensive?
Well, it's so different. It's hard to compare, because you go by air, you're traveling, as I say, just to get to the destination, whereas you go by road, you're traveling. I suppose we were probably on the road for 6 or 8 weeks, so you probably spend more money because you're there a long time. But traveling by air would be cheaper, definitely.
Wow. And I think that another important point probably to raise also is when you go by road, you don't miss anything at all. You get to see everything in every country or town or city or whatever you go by. You get to actually experience the people, because you can obviously stop for a while, interact, carry on, or things like that. I may be wrong, but from...
No, that's 100% right. And people, the nice thing about being on a motorbike rather than in a car, in a car you're in a box with windows. People, you're sort of separated from what's going on. Whereas in a motorbike, you stop at the side of the road and people are there. They can come to talk to you. You're in the scene, and motorbikes are, a lot of countries are quite unusual. So it's easier to make friends and meet people as well.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to do it.
So from this point, because you've traveled part of the world and you've been able to interact with people, can you tell us how different it was as you traveled around interacting with people from different countries? Give us like a pictorial image of what it was like when you dealt with people from a particular country as compared to others.
Well, people are all, no matter what people say, people are all pretty good, I believe. You do get some bad guys around the place and you have to be careful, but I think generally people are good. It's the governments that are bad. Some of the countries I've had the best friendships from, places like Sudan and Uganda, and this time Iran, which countries that you would be hesitant about going to from what you hear in the news, but when you get there, the people are the most friendly people you'd ever met. I remember in Iran, coming through Iran, you had to stop for petrol. The petrol stations very often wouldn't take cash. You had to pay card, and they wouldn't take my credit card. So I'd say to the guy, "Can you give me $10 worth of petrol?" And a couple of times the guy filled my tank, and I went to pay him the cash, and he wouldn't take the cash. He just said, "Enjoy our country, on you go, and have a good time," So
yeah,
people are very friendly when you least expect it. Of course, petrol was only 10 cents a litre, so it wasn't such a big deal for them, maybe.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think that as I listened to the group that I had mentioned about, the group that had left Ghana for England by road, I think some of the things they had said in the media when they were asked what were some of the good things they had encountered on the road, I think they said what actually projected them more was football as a country. So when they got to certain places, people, because they had a Ghana flag on their cars, so people knew they were Ghanaians. And then they'll want to be sure they're from Ghana, they'll say, are you from Ghana? They'll say yes. Oh, because of Abedi Pele, because Abedi Pele used to be one of our footballers, and I think he flew our flags very high when he was on the football pitch. So people know him around. And for that reason, they said for that reason, they would even get police escorts as they drive through. So I think these are some of the things, some of the interesting things you don't get to experience when you are in air. Only when you're on land and going through some of these countries that you get to appreciate how people appreciate us as human beings, or as a group of people, or as a particular group of people. And those were some of the experiences I wanted you to share with us. That's why I asked you. But I'm very excited for the fact that I think all around the world we do identify ourselves as the human race, and no matter where we find ourselves, everybody is willing to help you, and that is really, really something really positive to throw out there, and to emphasize that we are all one people going forward, and wherever we find ourselves, if anybody needs help, we should be able to help us. So let's carry on, Chris, to why adventure before dementia.
Well, 65, quite a few of my friends have retired already, and sort of looking ahead to think my time is coming as well. I'm still working, but I want to spend more time doing what I want to do. But when I look at some of the friends who have retired, they've been working for 40 years, 40 hours a week, and they end up doing very little. They end up working in the garden, or digging the garden, or maybe playing golf twice a week instead of once a week. Yeah. And I started thinking, well, what was the point of working for 40 years to do nothing, to just sit back and get old and lose your faculties? So it's a bit of play on that. I thought there's no reason why you shouldn't, if you're fit and able to, get out and do what you want to do whatever you want to do when you were young. I think people lose the yearning to learn about different things when they get older. They get more staid and steadfast, and they're set in their ways. And I feel that myself. It's as you get older, you lack the energy to get up and do something different. But I wanted to show, if you like, that you can, no matter what age you are, you can still get up your butt and do what you want to do. You know. Yeah. Yeah. So adventure before dementia is like, hopefully you don't forget too much of what we do when we're doing it at this stage. But I think it's important to make use of your faculties too, because if you don't use your brain, if you don't use your body, it'll deteriorate the same way. So it's important to get out there. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I remember when my dad had come on pension, he said he wanted to start doing something, else he was going to die early. He said that he used to say that a lot. So he started a flower garden just to keep him going. Every time he wakes up to something, and then he has his hands on doing something. And I think that really, really worked for him, because it kept him alive for quite a long time, from the time he had come to pension till he was finally taken away. But I totally agree with you for those points you've raised, and I think that is the best thing to do. What is the strangest thing that has ever happened to you?
On air.
Either on air, on land, wherever.
The strangest thing. There's been one or two strangest. One of the strangest things, I suppose, in the first trip was that we met some people in Peru, some students, and just took a few photographs and chatted with them for an hour, and went on our way. I got to Argentina, and I got sick with hepatitis, and I was very ill. I lay down on the bench in the train station when I got there, just to get a nap. And little did I know, the girl had been showing her friends of her photographs the day before, and one of them recognised the bike and myself sitting in the Buenos Aires train station. So she came over and picked me up and said, you can stay with us, and wined me and dined me, looked after my bike, and got me shipped home. It'd be a bit like somebody arriving in Euston Station and running into somebody that they knew without any organisation. But the strangest thing was that a month later, a friend I'd been travelling with in Peru, a German guy, had also got to Buenos Aires, and he was sitting in the park in the middle of town. And lo and behold, the same girl walked past and ended up putting him up for the week as well. So there's two coincidences which are a million to one, happen one after the other. It's probably one of the strangest things in the trips.
Yeah, you can't, sometimes you just can't avoid some of these bad happenings. But thank you very much for sharing that with us. And what is the funniest thing that has ever happened to you?
The funny thing is, when I got to Cape Town, I got a job on a boat, on a yacht race, because the guy from Australia had hurt his leg. I got his place on the boat. And we exchanged addresses and shook hands and said, maybe see you in Ireland and the UK if you're going to go there. And again, 2 months later, I was driving down the street in Donegal, and he was driving up the other direction, but the same guy. So we bumped into him and met up, had a few drinks, and stayed friends ever since.
Did you make a lot of friends on your journey? Like when you went on the bike journey, did you make a lot of friends on that journey?
Yeah, I think if you make a friend when you're having a challenging time, they're a friend for life. You know, you can spend a week with somebody, you can spend a year with somebody and never know them. But if you spend a week with somebody in a difficult time, whatever it is, it's much more important to you and much more ingrained in your brain. So I have met, since I wrote the book, there's various characters in it that got in touch with again, and it's been quite touching to speak to somebody after 40 years, because, as you say, the main part of our earning life, our working life, is gone. So we met them before we started working, and again to meet them afterwards. It's been quite emotional sometimes to meet guys that I haven't seen for 40 years, and you sit down and have a beer with them, and you get on with them same as we did 40 years ago without a break. You know. Yeah.
Wow, this is so interesting. This time around, as you make your second journey, will you be doing that alone or with someone else?
Well, as I say, it started a year and a half ago, and it just finished this a couple of months ago. I started off with the guy who had suggested that I finally do go to Australia. He said he'd come with me. It was his idea to go, and then we got to Athens, and he decided he didn't like it anymore, so he came back. So I ended up on my own after all.
So if I'm getting you right, has the second journey been done?
Yes, I just finished it.
I
must have where you got that from. Well, it was off my bio. I probably haven't updated my bio yet, because I only just got back a couple of months ago.
Wow.
So it's all finished. The motorbike is now in a museum in Melbourne, Australia.
Great. What is the feedback you're getting from your motorbike being displayed over there?
Well, I got a great reaction. A couple of talks with people. The motorbike circles are quite sociable, in Australia especially. They were quite amazed that I'd actually made it after 43 years. So I got a great reaction from the different guys. I think I've stayed in Australia for 3 weeks, and I think I stayed in a hotel maybe 2 or 3 nights, because everywhere you went, people want to pick you up and take you out for dinner and make a fuss. So it was a great hospitality.
Wow. Now that I know you've done the second journey already, can we compare the first journey to the second journey? What was the difference like as you made the second journey?
Well, obviously I'm a lot older, and so, I mean, when I was 21 I could ride the motorbike all day and go out and party all night, whereas now I'd ride the motorbike all day and I would just want to go to bed with a cup of cocoa and go to sleep, you know.
Yeah.
But I could still do it. I suppose probably the main thing has been the internet age has come in. When roads are different, people are different, but the internet has made the world so much smaller. It's much easier to communicate.
Yeah.
I think I drove down Africa. It took me 6 months, and I maybe rang home twice, 2 or 3 times, because it was so difficult to get a phone. Whereas this time you have your mobile, you can phone home on WhatsApp every night and talk to my wife and kids and stuff. Say you can constant communication. You have your GPS, as I say, you got booking.com, your online information, whatever you need to know, it's all there. So that's probably the biggest change in the world I've seen.
So can we then say that the world has gotten better from the time you went on the first journey as compared to now, because of the internet age?
It's got easier. Lots of ththings have got easier. Whether it's better, it's another thing. It's whether the likes of Facebook and Instagram and social media make things better, and I have been two minds about that. Sometimes it's too easy to communicate because you're communicating to people that are supposed to be friends, but they're not friends at all. They're just people that are nosy enough to know what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, the internet has helped a lot of things, but I think it's definitely things that kids these days are losing out on, because I think the average person spends 5 hours a day on their screens, which is 5 hours is a third of your waking life, or waking day is stuck on a screen, where you should be out speaking to people rather than talking to a phone.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. Did you document this journey on social media as you went along? And if you did, what were some of the feedbacks or the responses you got from people when they got to know you had done this journey?
I didn't put it on social media. I mean, I put a few photographs on social media as I went along, but some people do it every night, and as I say, I really don't agree with that. If you're away traveling, you should be where you are. You know, if you're India, you should be in India. You should be in India, looking at India. You shouldn't be thinking about sending pictures back to where you are. But that's just my opinion. Just the old-fashioned, starting to sound like my dad. You know, it wasn't like that in my day. But I think you should focus on the here and now rather than trying to impress people at home. So I didn't really bother with that. But I have got photographs and took videos, and I'll be putting something together for people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. People on the internet always have their own opinions, and people will call them netizens. So people on the net are citizens of the net, and they always have their own opinions, and most of the time they may not agree with yours and the reason why you're doing it. But obviously, I always say that if whatever you're doing is for the right reasons and is making you happy, just go with it. And we cannot be too much bothered about the negativity on the internet. To finally wrap up, what will your final message be to our listeners?
Apart from buy my book.
Great.
As I say, I suppose just repeat, you know, live for today and get out, no matter what age you are. Don't get tied to, I'm an old retired person, I can't do anything. You can do what you did. If you got your legs and your arms and everything's working, you can do what you did when you were 21. Maybe a little bit slower, maybe a little bit different, but you can still do it. Get out and do it. Stop sitting around watching TV and get off your screens.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. If Chris, at age 65, was able to go on his bike, ride around the world as an impressive thing to do and a challenge to himself, then I believe that we can all do that. I also believe that whatever we put our minds to, if we are determined, dedicated and focused, we should be able to achieve it. As the Purpose Podcast with SHEILA, if others have been able to do it, we can do it as well. So I would like to say a massive thank you, Chris, for coming on Podcast with SHEILA today.
Been a pleasure, SHEILA. Thanks very much.
Great. If you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 89 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing seasoned guests with inspiring life experiences and stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Whilst at it, please drop us a rating. We have a video presentation of this episode on our YouTube channel. Just search for Podcast with SHEILA on YouTube and you would find us. Our prayer for you this week is that you never give up when challenges arise. Together, we will make the world a better place. Until we meet again, have a brilliant week.